can't pay, won't pay. Italian, non si paga. Non si paga, also translated we can't pay, we won't pay, and low pay, don't pay, is a play originally written in Italian by Dario Fo in 1974. Regarded as Fo's best-known play internationally after Morte Accidentale di un anarchico, it had been performed in 35 countries by 1990. Considered a Marxist political farce, it is a comedy about consumer backlash against high prices. About the playwright. Dario Luigi Angelo Fo, Italian pronunciation. Dario F. 24 March 1926 to 13 October 2016, was an Italian playwright, actor, theater director, stage designer, songwriter, political campaigner for the Italian left wing and the recipient of the 1997 Nobel Prize in Literature. In his time he was, arguably the most widely performed contemporary playwright in world theater. 2. Much of his dramatic work depends on improvisation and comprises the recovery of illegitimate forms of theater, such as those performed by jewelry medieval strolling players. 3. And, more famously, the ancient Italian style of commedia dell'arte. His plays have been translated into 30 languages and performed across the world, including in Argentina, Bulgaria, Canada, Chile, Iran, the Netherlands, Poland, Romania, South Africa, South Korea, Spain, Sri Lanka, 5. Sweden, the United Kingdom, 6. the United States, 7. and Yugoslavia. 8. 9. His work of the 1960s, 1970s and 1980s is peppered with criticisms of assassinations, corruption, organized crime, racism, Roman Catholic theology, and war. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, he took to lampooning Forza Italia and its leader Silvio Berlusconi, while his targets of the 2010s included the banks amid the European sovereign debt crisis. Also in the 2010s, he became the main ideologue of the Five Star Movement, the anti-establishment party led by Beppe Grillo, 10, often referred to by its members as the Master. 11. Fo's solo piece Celebre, titled Mistero Buffo and performed across Europe, Canada and Latin America over a 30-year period, is recognized as one of the most controversial and popular spectacles in post-war European theater and has been denounced by Cardinal Ugo Poletti, Cardinal Vicar for the Diocese of Rome, as the most blasphemous show in the history of television. 112. The title of the original English translation of Non si paga. Non si paga, can't pay, won't pay, has passed into the English language. 13. And the play is described as capturing something universal in actions and reactions of the working class. 14. His receipt of the 1997 Nobel Prize in Literature marked the international acknowledgement of Fo as a major figure in 20th century world theater. 15. The Swedish Academy praised Fo as a writer who emulates the jesters of the Middle Ages in scourging authority and upholding the dignity of the downtrodden. 16. He owned and operated a theater company. Fo was an atheist. 17. Summary. It was the first show performed in the Palazzina Liberty on 3 October 1974. 11. A North American English language adaptation was created by R. G. Davies around 1984. 12. The American premiere was performed by the San Francisco Mime Troupe. 13. The title of the original English translation in 1975 by Lino Pertile, One Can't Pay, Won't Pay, has passed into the English language. 2. The play is written to criticize merchants and landlords responsible for raising the prices of necessary goods and rent, and the bosses who cut jobs, salaries, and benefits. However, the real political target of the play was the moderatism of the Italian Communist Party, as represented by Antonia's husband, Giovanni. At the time the play was written, its leader Enrico Berlinguer had launched a program of historical compromise. This meant that members were to follow a policy of sacrifices for the national interest, reluctantly acceding to lower working-class living standards. In Berlinguer's words, a more austere society can be, and must be, a more equal, better ordered and more just society, which is really more democratic and free, and definitely more human. Rank-and-file Italian communists were critical of this policy, which gave no hope for their living standards to improve. Fo was urging party members to reject the policies of their party leadership. 11. The original Italian, unlike the English version, makes direct criticisms of the Italian Communist Party (PCI). For example, not included in the English version is when Antonia tells Giovanni, 11. I'm fed up with your hot air, your speeches about responsibility, about sacrifice, about the dignity of tightening your belt, about your pride, about being working class. And who are these workers? Who is this working class? It's us, didn't you know? But you can't see a thing because your eyes are tied up like you were playing blind man's buff. And you sit around like God knows what, mouthing off your slogans. Additionally, as the play goes on, Giovanni's character grows more critical of the policy of sacrifice and the powerlessness he feels from them. 11. You can't just say to the bosses, "Excuse me, could you just move over there, we need a bit of breathing space. Please be a little kinder, a bit more understanding, let's come to an agreement." Oh no, the only way to get that mob thinking straight is to stuff them down the bog and pull the chain. Then things would be great. Maybe there would be a few less illuminated window displays, less motorways, we've always been rushing around to keep them going. Now we'll keep ourselves going, we'll build our own houses, make a new life for ourselves. Some leftist Italians criticize the play because they found it to be too similar to Fo's older plays. Fo responded that he had never abandoned farce. 11. 2 weeks after the play's first performance, women in Milan began taking control of the cash registers and paying the prices for items before the sudden raise in costs. Right-wing newspapers considered Fo and Can't Pay, Won't Pay to have inspired the incidents. Fo responded to these allegations, commenting, 11. It emerged during cross-examination that the prices fixed by the supermarkets were out-and-out robbery. In the end, all the women who had been charged were freed because there was no case to answer. To put it simply, the court decided that those shoppers had paid the correct value of the goods. Consequently, you can deduce that the owners had arbitrarily increased the process, doubling them. The bosses were the real thieves. Rumors circled that Fo would be arrested for the actions of the Red Brigades, though he never was. Fo reflected on this and the reasons for the rumor. Perhaps they don't want to just frighten us. Maybe they're trying to discredit the commune as well, which, with its thousands of members, is becoming an increasingly awkward phenomenon. 11. The play focuses on a single day when a few hundred women revolt against increasing food prices and decide to pay only what they want for their bags full of groceries, which ends up being nothing. The women escape with their groceries, but soon the police are knocking on every door in the neighborhood to root them out. Pressure builds as layoffs from the local factory are expected, and the police start issuing eviction notices since no one can afford to pay their rent. Even though the work was originally published by Italian playwright Dario Fo in 1974, the tensions explored between the working class and police feel very timely. And comedy might be the cleverest way to take a look at these tough issues. Antonia has just returned home laden with bags of food. She tells her friend, Margherita, about the women's revolt at the supermarket. Antonia vacillates between gleeful pride at her haul and fear of reprisal from her law-abiding husband, Giovanni. Antonia doesn't see much wrong with what she has done, since the prices were so high and she doesn't have enough money to pay rent, much less eat, but she doesn't want to be caught with her booty. Just before Giovanni returns, Antonia convinces Margherita to smuggle the groceries out of the apartment under her coat. Can't Pay, Won't Pay tells the story of two working-class women, Antonia and Margherita, who are frustrated by rising prices and struggling to make ends meet. Along with the other women in their neighborhood, they decide to rebel against the cost of living by taking goods without paying. However, hiding the shoplifting spree from their husbands and the pursuing authorities might prove a little trickier than expected. Can't Pay, Won't Pay is set in a modest working-class flat in a working-class suburb of Milan. The playwright details how in his play the political situation in 1974 translates into chaos in ordinary people's lives. It starts with the Italian Prime Minister Signor Rumor's warning to the population that they will have to tighten their belts because of the international money crisis. This results in a 4-hour general strike in protest at the government's delay in dealing with inflation, unemployment and the energy crisis. By March the government has resigned, and a new government is formed without Republicans. However, there is continuing financial crisis, and now soaring inflation. The new government resigns after just 3 months. In the play, both the pace and the absurdity are cranked up a notch. By late summer, there is a spaghetti war. Stocks of pasta vanish from the supermarket shelves, as prices of pasta, milk and sugar double, and meat prices also escalate. This is followed by the ludicrous image of Italy being hit by soggy spaghetti. inferior flour has been used to cut production costs. The situation is worsened when only a fraction, 1/8, of the wheat which has been granted to Italy by their EEC partners is distributed. The remainder lies rotting in Sicilian warehouses, and is eventually sold as animal feed, at inflated prices. This, then, is the preamble to the play's Fast and Furious comedy. By the end of the year, the tension breaks after months of frustration. There is a spontaneous demonstration by a few housewives, as they decide to do something about it. They refuse to pay for their weekly shop. Some food is snatched, and for the rest, what is considered a fair sum is paid. They leaflet other women, calling on them to also take direct action against the inflationary supermarket prices, and pay the just sum rather than what is being charged. Margherita leads a revolt at her local supermarket, and looting guts the building. Along with her friend Antonia, the two women try desperately to hide their liberated goods before their husbands and the police catch up with them. Crazy disasters pile on top of each other as the two women try to cope with the results of their own actions without telling their husbands what they have been up to. As the police come knocking, Margherita and Antonia cook up an outrageous plan to hide their pillaged groceries. Hysterical phantom pregnancies, saints, and curses are all invented to stop the police fingering the culprits who raided the store, with predictably hilarious consequences. Coffins and undertakers are both included in the plot, as devices to dispose of the spoils before their spouses find out what their women have done. And if you've ever wondered how to survive on a diet of dog food and bird seed, this play will show you. The play is clearly a political statement about the life and times of Italy in the 1970s. Dario Fo shows that the struggle to make ends meet, coupled with the loss of jobs, is the cost that working class carry in the fight against inflation. It is arguably also a feminist comedy, as it is written to show the viewpoint of the housewife, struggling to afford the ever-rising prices in the shops. Its themes of unemployment, class division, and women's role in society then continued to strike a relevant note through 1980s Britain. Continuing decades have also seen its relevance to their own problems, in various countries, with crooked politicians and bankers' bonuses. Dario Fo was born in San Giano, a small town on Lago Maggiore in Lombardy. He spent his childhood moving from one town to another, as his father's postings were changed at the whim of the railway authorities. In 1940 he moved to Milan to study at the Brera Art Academy. After the war, he studied architecture, then turned his attention to stage design and theater decor, and began to improvise monologues and satirical sketches to entertain his friends. As a result, he quickly became involved in political cabaret shows. From the very beginning, the provocative political content and topical nature of his comedy made his work controversial, and led to trouble with the authorities. In 1953 he wrote and directed a satirical play, but after its initial success, both the government and the church authorities censored his work. He later gave up architecture in disgust at the level of corruption he found. He continued to write and produce plays in which he spoke out against state corruption and political scandal, and also openly criticized the church. From 1958 he and his wife, the actress Franca Rame, have collaborated in productions for one of the 3 theater companies they have founded in Italy. In 1997 Dario Fo received the Nobel Prize for Literature. The UK's first performance of Can't Pay, Won't Pay, was in London in 1978. It was a success and was revived for London's West End in 1981 where it ran for 2 years. Time Out reported, Fo's ingenious farce careers through an escalating progression of improbabilities and confusions until it concludes with a thorough and well-timed solution. I saw that performance towards the end of its run. There have been various subsequent productions. Dario Fo continues to be one of the world's most frequently performed living playwrights. His dramatic work employs comedic methods of the ancient Italian, commedia dell'arte, which came out of Venice in the 1600s. It was a popular form of street theater, based on sketches or improvised scenarios between stock characters. These were based on universal types of masters, servants and lovers. This theatrical style was very popular with ordinary working-class people. I was alerted again to this play by a good Goodreads friend, herself Italian, and very familiar with the work of Dario Fo, an author local to her. She had been surprised to find Can't Pay, Won't Pay, referred to in a novel she was reading, perhaps not having realized how widespread and admired Dario Fo's work is worldwide. In one of the ironic twists life sometimes throws up, in the course of revisiting the play, I came across a production by a theater local to me now. When was it, I wondered? Staggeringly, it is a current production. This makes me wonder why this particular play was selected at this particular moment. Of course the UK has an ongoing struggle of its own, with drastic cutbacks, and in a curious echo of the Italian Prime Minister back in 1974, there has been a demand from the current Prime Minister of the UK to ordinary people to make sacrifices and tighten our belts. The best work of literature seem to convey a message which transcends the particular scenario of the play, novel or poem. They convey a universal observation or truth, one which can be transposed to any individual's situation in any place, or a theory which can be applied across humanity. Dario Fo's play appears initially to be about a microcosm, a specific culture in a small place, within a particular political system and within a specific economic climate at a particular point in time. Yet it succeeds brilliantly at communicating much broader insights, ones which seem relevant to each new audience at the time they are watching. And it does it very entertainingly. This, to me, is the sign of a true classic. According to reviewer Velveter. Like a lot of good satire, not only is the target of the satire savaged in this play, so too are the ones whose opinions most closely align. When I think about say 1984, in the way that all dystopia is a kind of parody, I think about while there is a direct critique going on in the novel, what is most effective about it is that it's also a broader critique of power. Right now, we're in the middle of a kind of inflation crisis, there's blame being thrown toward everyone about everything. And the way politics works, the number one goal is to always start by assessing blame and avoiding responsibility. Even taking responsibility is a way to deflect responsibility. And all of this is because of the central goal of all politics, to stay in power. In this play, we have a similar situation. Prices are high and people are revolting. We begin with two women meeting on the stairs. One woman notices that her neighbor has absolutely bursting shopping bags, and when she confronts her friend about this, the friend avers, making a joke about having a rich lover. When pressed, she tells about a revolt at the grocery store where inflated prices, which is also the result of price gouging, were meant to understand hit a breaking point, and all the shoppers just started grabbing whatever they could. So too did the neighbor. Not that she grabbed anything she really needed. Dog food, rabbit heads, and other random, but expensive items, because the passion and explosion of outrage and riots tends not to involve logic, but rage. From there, the women's husbands come home where one gives him a dinner of dog food and rabbit head stew with millet bird food. The rest of the play explores these criticisms and absurdities. In general, the play is a critique of the Communist Party in Italy, but not from a right-east perspective, but more so as a kind of devil's advocate way. If the party is meant to deliver a working society, and fails, it doesn't really benefit the citizens to be starving, if ideologically pure.